Hey everyone, welcome back. It's the Breakpoint Show. We've been gone for a little while. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about everything. As you can see, we're missing Khalid. He's on vacation like Maarten and I have been in the past, but we wanted to get a show out. So Maarten and I said, "Oh, the heck with Khalid.
We don't need Khalid.
We don't need him. We don't need him." So it's December 2nd, 2024. We are after .NET 9 release, which we'll talk about. We'll talk about conferences. We'll talk about a little bit of everything. We'll talk about some big news around Rider and WebStorm from JetBrains. But first, if you like what you're hearing from us, go down and give us a like on YouTube if you're watching this on YouTube, and subscribe. It really does help us out. And the algorithm, whatever the algorithm is, I still don't know what the algorithm is, but I guess liking it and subscribing helps get it out in front of other people. So Maarten, let's jump into it. .NET 9. Well, I mean, so far, what's your view of it?
So far, I think we covered this in a previous episode as well, but so far it looks like it's an evolution rather than a revolution, which probably is a good thing because a lot of people on social media have all been saying that things are moving too fast and so on. So in that regard, if you're happy on .NET 8, I think you can be happy on .NET 8 for the next year. If you do want to go with the latest and shiny bits that are out there, there is some improvements in .NET 9 that you can bring to your application. And as usual, the one that I always find really interesting, I have Speaker Travel, my side project that is running, and every single time there's a release, I generally update the framework version and everything to see how it behaves, if it's faster, if CPU usage and things like that go down. And I'm happy to say that's yet again, this is the case. So you get free performance gains just from upgrading to .NET 9, even if you don't really want to look into everything else that is there.
Yeah, I saw this web page with some analytics and some stuff around loops. So it took like 10,000 loops, 100,000 loops, and went up by increments. And when it hit, and it got up to like 1 million or 10 million loops, and they were measuring all the languages, popular languages now, and how much memory they consumed doing these loops. And C# was strange. All the other languages were consistently using about the same memory or maybe a little bit more memory as the number of loops for the test went up. C# went down. So C#, when you hit like 1 million loops in this test, it actually used the least amount of memory out of all popular languages, which was kind of strange. It was even less than Rust and like C and C++. Well, not C, but C++. And I guess that's probably because it doesn't have to JIT, and it at that point that executable code kind of stabilizes out, and probably everything else has been pushed through the garbage collector, and so you just get this base JITted code, and it just can run over and over again.
I hadn't seen that one yet. Speaking of JIT, there is an interesting thing though, and I think this is also one of the less visible maybe themes that are in .NET 9 this release. We covered this in a previous episode as well, where there's a lot of preparation work or ongoing work going into native AOT, where you can compile .NET 9 or .NET into a native executable. And if you look at, for example, Entity Framework Core, if you look at the new Open API generator that is there, if you look at system.text.json, improvements in terms of native AOT are definitely there. So you can just see that .NET is moving at a really good pace towards being fully native compilable in many scenarios. I think if
Yeah,
you
I
need
saw
reflection
that
and so on,
also.
that's
That,
still going to be an issue.
yep.
But everything else, there's good progress being made there. So really curious to
Yeah.
see what's going on.
And that'll be really good for like mobile developers and Maui. I assume that's good for Maui because
Yeah.
you want that executable, and probably for Avalonia, it's probably good for Avalonia, another third party.
And for server, if
Yeah.
you're, I mean, you are a backend person, I'm a backend person as well, most of the time. So it's great if you have anything that is serverless or you need a really fast startup time. There's no jitting involved because it is a native executable, so your application will be running much faster. If you're doing Lambdas on AWS or anything that is Azure Functions, for example, anything that is compiled to native will obviously be much faster to boot.
Yeah. So let me ask you, why wouldn't I want to do AOT all the time? Is there any situations where not running a .NET application in AOT has issues?
It depends would be the answer, I guess.
I'm just trying to think of like a situation where AOT would be at a disadvantage in general, on average, over AOT.
In terms of specifics, not every framework out there, and things like ASP.NET Core MVC, for example, all of those frameworks are not ready for AOT yet because there's a lot of reflection and other magic involved. However, you can see that more and more components of the framework are moving towards no longer using reflection, but using source generators, for example, to generate the source code of accessing those members that you would typically access using reflection. So you can see there's a trend there, but in general, I think if the frameworks that you are using or targeting don't really support AOT yet, then, well, you can't use it. And I think the other disadvantage is obviously going to be that .NET is typically, if you use the JITted version, you have one executable or one target platform that you can ship to every single platform out there. Whereas with native AOT, you would have to compile for every single platform and redistribute all of the executables based on which platform you are targeting.
Yeah, I mean, we've had that issue for years and years, even before .NET, where you have to drag along all your, either you compile all your DLLs into your executable, or you have them all just kind of around your executable ready to be used. But yeah, that was, I remember those days where DLL hell was a thing back in the early days of Windows development.
Yes. Yeah.
So
the other interesting thing in this release, by the way, and I'm not sure if you had the time to look at things yet, because I know you've been traveling to conferences and so on in the meantime, but the updates to Aspire are quite interesting.
Yes.
So for those of you who don't know, Aspire is a framework that allows you to set up orchestration of your different projects that you might have. So if you have a front-end React application and a back-end .NET application that needs a SQL server, for example, you can orchestrate all that, see how it all fits together, do service discovery, and basically find the address or the connection string to your database from Aspire. That's gotten a lot of quality of life improvements. So you can now, for example, wait for dependencies to spin up so you don't get your application crashing when your database container is not up and running yet. So you can actually wait for the dependencies that are in there. And a bunch of other things. You can more easily run Entity Framework core migrations now. So definitely have a look at that if you've tried the early version.
I do need to dig into Aspire. So talking about like traveling to conferences, when I was in Tunisia, I was in the very first .NET paid conference in Tunisia. So we were in Tunis, and wonderful country. If anyone wants a place to visit, it's awesome. We went to Carthage and saw the Roman ruins, and we saw Roman ruins of a Roman bath, and it was a great country, and the people were nice, and the food was good, and everything. But I did a workshop on Terraform, a full day workshop. And so when I got to the next conference, so I traveled from Tunisia up to Prague for Update Conference, which is probably my favorite conference that I speak at. That and DevSum are my two favorites I love. I was talking to Chad Green. You probably know Chad Green. He's a Microsoft MVP, good guy. And he was a speaker at Update. And we were talking, and he was talking about building something that would take your Aspire manifest, which is it's the file that stores all the details about your whole kind of hardware configuration, all your resource configuration stuff, and building something that transform that manifest from Aspire to Terraform, so that you could have a Terraform file that you could run and keep updated and have and use Terraform to keep the status of your especially cloud resources. So that was interesting. I need to reach out to him to see if he needs any help with that.
That's really cool. I saw there's also a project that takes your Aspire manifest and then converts it into a Kubernetes manifest that you can then deploy on a Kubernetes cluster. But I guess Terraform also makes a lot of sense there.
Yeah. So really cool stuff with Aspire. In the beginning, I thought, it wasn't really ready for prime time. But I think now, with .NET 9 and all the improvements, I think it's ready for, at least for maybe if you have a small deployment or a small project you have to get up on Azure or AWS, because it does support AWS also. Especially it's still open source, so that's good. You can dig in and see the insides of it. So yeah, great call out.
Yeah. So from your travels, because you've been all over the place, is there anything that stood out for you, or anything you saw that was like, hey, this is something when I get back I have to look into?
You know what, the Aspire stuff was probably the big stuff. And you know what, I've scratched the surface of Blazor, but I need to dig in a little bit more with Blazor. I think the improvements in .NET 9 that they did with Blazor are really interesting. And I think for people, I mean, I know enough of JavaScript to be dangerous, maybe not proficient, but to be dangerous. But I do need to really dig in the Blazor and see what and if I could how much of my C# experience I could leverage and not have to do Java. Or if I needed Java, you just drop in and you can interrupt over with pretty much any JavaScript library. So you kind of have the best of both worlds, I think.
I haven't checked the what's new there yet either, so I really have to dig in as well.
Yep.
It is one of those cases where I think Blazor is now, if you look at the lifetime of Blazor, it's on version 3 or 4, so now is probably the right time to dig in.
Yeah. The old days of Microsoft, don't use anything until it hits version 3, probably is correct. So, but yeah. Other than that, I'm trying to think. Source generate. You know, I have not been good on learning and getting up to speed on source generation and source generators, so I need to also dig into that.
I think they are useful in many cases, but I think as a framework or library author, they're probably the most interesting, because you can have people have rich syntax to express what they want to achieve, but then use a source generator to optimize things under the hoods by the time you compile into an assembly.
Yeah.
It gives you a really nice design time, but at the same time you can still have this generator emit some very performant codes that doesn't get in the way.
Yeah, I need to reach out to our good buddy Jason Bach to he is, as far as I know, in the community outside of Microsoft, he knows source generators probably as well as anyone. So I need to ping him this holiday season and pick his brains on that. Yeah. So
but by the way, here's a quick trivia for you and maybe the audience as well. So in the release notes of .NET 9, there was one UI framework that got a really, really interesting update. Can you name the UI framework and the updates?
No,
just see if you can.
Let me guess.
If you can guess.
I don't know. Maui. I don't know.
Windows Forms now has dark mode supports.
Wow.
Really cool.
Wow. And there's lots of people that do WinForms. I mean, I bet you it's still a very popular framework out there in the community and through enterprise developers.
Actually, looking at here at JetBrains, if I look at what people are requesting the most for supports in Rider, our .NET IDE, WinForms is definitely top 3.
So let's, that's a great segue into the next topic. So WinForm and or Rider and WebStorm, about a month ago, or maybe 5 weeks ago, I've lost track of time, a new license came out so that people can use both of those IDEs from JetBrains in a non-commercial, personal way. So, and I know I was really excited about it because it's kind of a pain in the butt for me personally, that when I do workshops and I do like blog posts and I do screencasts, I feel like I had to use the community version of Visual Studio because that was a free version that anyone could use. But now with Rider, I can use Rider for my screenshots and my screen casts and stuff. So I want to thank JetBrains for that. So it's one less reason to have to jump over to Visual Studio.
It is really cool and actually quite funny as well. That's the exact reason you just mentioned, where you say, okay, now that you can use it for educational purposes and so on, means that I can use it in courses and workshops and so on. One of the interesting things that we are seeing is that it is being used in exactly those scenarios where people are jumping on board and trying it out just to see how they can do it without being forced, quotes around that one, into using Visual Studio or Visual Studio codes.
Yeah. Yep. And it's nice because you get, in Rider, you get all the WebStorm stuff and you get all the data grip stuff. And I don't think a lot of people realize, especially the data grip, that you get a full SQL relational database editor inside Rider.
Yeah, Data Grip, I still think is one of the underrated tools that JetBrains has. And I know I'm biased a little bit for working at JetBrains, but it's a fantastic tool. In Rider, it's one simple icon on the right-hand side where you have a tool window that opens up, but that tool window is a gateway to the world of databases.
Yeah. It's just nice having that pane over on the right-hand side to say, hey, what was that? What was the type of that column in that table? And you can go, oh, it was a nvarchar 120. And you don't have to jump out into some other editor or tool and see what the details of your database are. And you can also validate SQL statements. You can take a look at query plans within the data grip functionality. So it is really nice. So
absolutely.
So any other anecdotes or any other fun stuff that you can share around Rider and WebStorm? I know you can't give details like numbers and stuff, but have people reached out to you, or have you seen stuff where people were like excited about it?
Reddit has been on fire in a really good way. People seem to love it, especially WebStorm, for example. People are raving about the fact that they can just use WebStorm now for what they were doing in their free time and as a hobby and so on. No longer have to use Visual Studio Code and install all of the plugins that are needed there. But it's really cool to see the uptake.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it impacts the bottom line and people will transition from a free license over to a paid license, because it's really not that expensive for most developers.
Yeah, correct. But that remains to be seen. It's only been 5 weeks, so there's no meaningful data there yet that comes across the threshold of saying, okay, this is significant or not.
Yeah. What else? What's been going on in your world? I mean, you've been doing a lot. I know there's big stuff for you personally. You're leaving JetBrains.
Yes, yeah, I'm gonna be leaving JetBrains. Actually, this is my last week, so by the time this episode airs, I might not work there anymore. So going to Duende, the folks building identity server, going to be developer advocate for them, and essentially do what I do for JetBrains now, but for a different company.
Cool.
So really looking forward to that, because when I was a consultant back before JetBrains, I've been doing a lot of identity projects and so on. So it's actually quite nice to go back to that direction.
Nice. Well, congrats.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then the other interesting thing is right now making the final steps into getting our own conference next week running. So our user group here in Belgium, the Azure user group, has a conference called Cloud Brew. We have 2 days, 4 tracks, 450 attendees. And actually we sold out today, which is also nice. I'm currently working on the last minute practicals, like ordering food, making sure that we have all of the slide decks ready that will run on in the entrance and near every session room and so on, which is super boring work, but it has to be done.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, good. I'm thinking about starting a new event next year, but it's going to be different. It's more about collaboration and meeting up with people. So I'll give a little tease. So I have always wanted to have an event where people just came and they could code around other people or with people, and there would be other stuff around to do, like chit chat with people and learn new stuff and maybe have side discussions and stuff like that. So I'm thinking about doing one, don't know where in Michigan, but someplace central in Michigan, maybe over in Lansing, if I can get. Lansing's kind of in between Grand Rapids and Detroit, so it might be a good central place to do one. But I have to talk to people over there, but calling it Day of Dev. So yeah, so if anyone is interested in helping with that or doing one in your area, just reach out to me. So I'm looking at that next year.
That is very cool, and knowing from organizing this firsthand, there's a lot of work involved. Even a year out before you start doing anything, there's a lot of work that has to be done in terms of planning.
I know,
making sure you have a venue, sponsors, all of that. So
exactly. So I got to dig into that. So it might not be till next fall, but it's going to be sometime next year. So that, and I am down to 3 chapters of my C# networking programming book. I am wrapping up. What am I wrapping up? I am wrapping up webhooks right now. I just had to take a look at my list of things to do. So I'm wrapping up webhooks. I haven't released gRPC and I haven't released MQTT yet. So I'm looking at probably doing the remaining. So I think I have a couple more left, and then I do a one on Quick. You ever heard of Quick? QUIC. It's basically the protocol that is looking to replace IP, internet protocol that's been around for 60 years. So I'm going to do a short chapter looking at that and the future of the internet for that. So, but
Very
if
cool.
anyone wants that, they can go out to C#. So all spelled out, C#-networking.com, and they can take a look at that book so far, the content. So
it is a really cool book, and also it's I can recommend having a read because there's a lot of topics like on-socket programming and so on that I guess a lot of people doing web APIs on a day-to-day basis don't really care too much about.
Yeah.
But still interesting to see what goes on under the hood when you are making use of HTTP calls. And
yeah, I start from the very bottom, the very start, where we just talk about like protocols and what network working is, and you start out, you don't have to know anything. But I think that people need to know at least what's abstracted away a little bit, especially in .NET. The .NET team abstracts a lot of stuff away, which is good to get your stuff done quick. But it's also good to know how to drop down and what's being done inside all of those classes and stuff in those namespaces that we add to our .NET projects all the time.
And I will say from firsthand experience, some days you might need that knowledge as well. This one was not professional, but I have this home battery and solar panels and so on, and I was trying to hook it up into Home Assistant, which is a really nice project for combining home automation from various vendors. So I was trying to read the data from my solar installation to see how much power was being generated and so on, and that was really drop down to sockets and read the information from a bus somewhere on the network.
Cool. You have to blog about that. That'd be a good blog post, man.
But also,
not that you have any time. Not that you have any time to do that. But well, cool. I mean, we didn't want this to go much past 20, 25, 30 minutes. So I think unless you have anything to follow up, Maarten, or add anything else?
Not really. Looking forward to our next episode when it'll be us three again.
Yes.
Right now, I think we can probably call this episode "We Don't Need Khalid," but actually we do.
Yeah, we don't need. Well, if Khalid was here and he was actually doing his fun thumbnails, we would put make Khalid look like Waldo and say, "Where's Khalid?" and have Waldo Khalid in the thumbnail. But we'll figure it out. I'll try my best at getting an image for this, or we'll just wait till he gets back. Hopefully he's back later this week or something. But no, thanks everyone for sticking with us, and I know it's been a few weeks since we last published, and we don't like to do that. Again, if you like this on YouTube, subscribe. If you're listening to this on as a podcast, tell your friends about it. Give us a good recommendation wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you have ideas or people that you want us to have on the podcast for next year, we're trying to line up a few guests, maybe one guest every couple months. So if you want to be on the show, or if you have someone that has some great ideas that need to get in front of the community, let us know.
I couldn't have said that one better. Yes. Thank you.
But with that,
bye everyone.
I will let Maarten kind of send us out, and we'll see you in a week or two. Bye everyone.
Bye everyone. See ya.